Hey everyone, this is the next episode of Vegans Are Mentally Ill, Vami, and I've been on this giant Michael Jackson kick lately, okay? I just love his music and I love his videos. We're not going to get into any other subject matter because I'm talking about veganism and eating disorders in this video. So, if you look at Michael Jackson, even at the peak of his career, I would argue actually, especially at the peak of his career, uh, he looks great. He looks beautiful. You know, he has these really great production value, really great costumes and everything, but he's very thin. And um, I remember people talking about that, like when he died, that he was very thin at the point of his death. But, you know, looking back to his videos of him from the 80s, he's been very thin his whole life. Um, almost kind of so thin. I'm like, if you see videos of him with his shirt off and you see just more of his body, like before he was totally covering himself, you're like, I'm like, ooh, is he okay? I obviously have now been being recommended a lot of Michael Jackson subject videos, and I found one about his diet, and I was not at all surprised to learn that he was actually a vegetarian at this point. Um, and in the peak of his career, he was vegetarian, and it was hard to get him to eat apparently because he had a personal chef, but there was absolutely no fake meat at in the 80s. Okay, no fake meat. He didn't like pasta, and he didn't even really like vegetables that much. So it was hard to feed him, hard to cook for him, and apparently one of his staff would like bring him food, whatever food they managed to cook for him, and he would eat like two bites and be like, "Okay, I'm done." So, I do wonder if that's I just wonder if vegetarianism and veganism, I don't wonder, I know for a fact it's a form of anorexia. Okay? When you have anorexia, you do not put food in your mouth on purpose. You purposely avoid it. Okay? Um so and that's not just a lot of anorexics eat a lot of candy, honestly. So it's not that they refuse to eat themselves point blank, it's the fact that they refuse to nourish themselves properly. And I think that the definition of anorexia should be adjusted to reflect that fact. So, yeah, and Michael would apparently he said something like, "Ooh, like it's weird for me to have a dead animal on my plate." We're gonna get into this, okay? We're gonna talk about another celebrity, though, who I know for a fact was vegetarian, at least at one point in his life. So we'll just look at more pictures. And I mean, it is rather fitting that he was so thin during Thriller because those are, he was being a zombie. But you can tell. I mean, he was probably, even if he was eating regular food, even if he's on the standard American diet, like he probably would have looked like this, right? I mean, he was also a dancer, so obviously he needed to be in shape for that. But like, you need to eat food to properly nourish yourself and have stamina and everything. Um, I didn't know that Michael actually had lupus. I was not aware of that until recently. And that's why he was so heavily medicated. And I just want to say this, and I want you guys to listen. I want everyone to listen. I want everyone to fucking know. I want to shout this from every rooftop in the nation, okay? If you have an autoimmune disorder, or you are likely to develop an autoimmune disorder, if one or both of your parents has an autoimmune disorder, you need to eat meat. Okay? I've heard of this happening more than once, not just with Michael Jackson. I don't think they were aware that he had lupus until um, probably the 90s. I don't know exactly. But sometimes you don't really have like any symptoms of an autoimmune disorder until you're a little bit older. until you're, well into your 20s, maybe into your 30s. Or maybe you just had these small things that you were like able to write off as normal, but they really weren't. If you don't eat meat, it will make your autoimmune disorder worse. Period. I want to fucking shake people because this just makes me so mad when they're like, oh, I wanted to go vegan to be healthier. Dumb shit. Ain't gonna work. You're gonna get more unhealthy if you're vegan. Jesus Christ. Okay. I also know for a fact that Tupac was at one point vegetarian. I think towards the end of his life he was also vegetarian. And he looks good. He looks great in a lot of the pictures of him and everything, but like he's a small guy. He was very small. He was only, I think, 5'7" or 5'8", and like Michael Jackson, he had a rough upbringing due to poverty. Tupac did. Michael Jackson had a rough upbringing due to child abuse. I don't know that Tupac was abused, but he had a rough go of it. Okay. Tupac also smoked cigarettes, and you can see. Oh, I forgot to tell you, there's some sexy screenshots in this. He smoked cigarettes, and I've actually met quite a few vegarexics who smoke cigarettes, and a lot of dancers also smoke cigarettes. A lot of anorexics smoke cigarettes, and that's because if you smoke a cigarette, I mean, feel free to try it, okay? I really, really, really do not advocate smoking. All y'all know that. But if you're dying to know, by all means, try it. One cigarette ain't gonna kill you. If you're hungry and you smoke a cigarette, it makes you feel like you're not hungry afterwards. Because that occupation of your mouth, inhaling smoke, and being on the cigarette tricks your mind into thinking that you ate. Or it's like a mind illusion. Your mind's like, oh, we ate? Okay. But it's the same with like gum. Like gum kind of makes you think that you're eating, but really you're not, because your mouth is occupied with a habit that you very likely would do whilst eating. You can tell this is where I get around. See, look, you can see his ribs there. Like, Tupac, if you look very carefully at a lot of pictures of Tupac, I know a lot of y'all won't do it. You're not as big a fan as I am. That's totally fine. But some of them, he does not look so hot. And obviously that's due to the stress that he was under. That's due to the, high demand schedule he was on. You can actually tell in this video, especially when he's dancing. My sweet thing had a ton of tension in his back. He was super, extremely tense in his upper back. And I think that when you smoke cigarettes, it does that. It encourages your upper back to just be really, really tense. Because, I mean, another thing about cigarettes that people don't realize is, like, it actually causes you to breathe very deeply. And breathing very deeply is great for us, but you don't need to breathe very deeply with having a cigarette. I'm just saying, a lot of the times when you can tell that Tupac is inebriated, you can tell that Tupac is stressed out. Like, in my opinion, he kind of looks not so hot. And what I was going to say earlier was, I am convinced that people with very complex childhood traumas are more likely to become vegetarian or vegan. And I knew a guy, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but he had very, very high trauma growing up. And he became this, evangelical vegan. But he also lost a lot of weight from being vegan. Anyway, beside the point. But I did say that in another video, that a lot of vegans just lose a ton of weight. A lot of obese people become vegan and they lose a ton of weight, and then they're like, oh, it's because of the veganism. And it's like, sort of, but it's also because you made the conscious decision to be healthier and that you wanted to lose weight, and veganism helped you to do that. So cool. Um, I'm just saying that I think people who have very, very complex childhood trauma um, become weirdly obsessed, and maybe they identify with the uh, quote unquote trauma that animals face. Okay, a lot of animals do face a lot of trauma, but I'm saying, like, if we could make all meat halal, okay, and every chicken and cow and whatever had a great life until it was slaughtered for meat, um, wouldn't that be great? Yes, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like people who have complex trauma over identify with these farm animals. And I think that a lot of the time when they're, you know, saying, oh, I don't eat meat, or like, oh, these animals are good or whatever, and then they don't deserve all this trauma, they're really talking about themselves. And I know for a fact that compartmentalizing complex trauma and pinning it onto another being is not really going to help you. Like, cool, feeble attempt, fam, but you need to directly address whatever issues you are facing in order to get better. I'll give you an example. Y'all don't know this about me, but now you're going to know this about me. I really did not know how to cook hardly anything until I was like 24. I'm serious. I could do some extremely basic shit, but I legitimately refused to cook myself meat at home. I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's true. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to do it. No one ever taught me. I was also overly afraid of foodborne illnesses. I was overly afraid of like salmonella and food poisoning. Um, just so y'all know, it's estimated over half the cases of food poisoning in the United States actually come from produce, not improper meat stuff, but beside the point. Yeah, so when I was 24, I was like, this was so ridiculous. What I would do is I would cook for myself, but I would only cook vegetarian dishes for myself. But if I wanted meat, I would go to a restaurant and I would order meat there, and they could cook me the meat. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is preposterous. I was like, listen, me, you need to learn how to cook meat. This is stupid. And I was like, you're right, me. I'm going to learn how to cook meat. So I did. And now I can cook meat, and I love cooking meat. I need a little bit of help, but like, I figured it the fuck out. I stopped not liking meat. I stopped refusing to cook meat in my own home, because like, how ridiculous is that? Honestly, that I would go to a restaurant and get meat, but I wouldn't cook myself meat. That's stupid. Because I never set foot in those kitchens at those restaurants. I wouldn't even know if they were up to health codes. But I was just like, okay, these people can cook me meat. No idea what's going on back there, but I myself won't cook meat. Like, I knew how stupid that was, and I stopped. Okay? So now we're going to go to the last vegetarian who probably blows my mind the most. Hitler was a vegetarian. Okay? And I think I learned that when I was like 12 to 14. And I was like, wait. What? Hitler was a vegetarian? It was like, does not compute in my brain. I looked into it, and he was vegetarian, and apparently when people would ask him why he was vegetarian, he would like go into depth explaining how they kill animals and how gross it is and da da da. And I'm like, that does not compute even more to me. Because if you're so upset about how they kill a pig in order for you to eat it, you just cannot apply that logic to Jewish folks. But like, okay, um, he he was not well. Obviously, he was and he wasn't. Hitler faced very extreme abuse as a child. His stepfather physically abused him a lot. Okay, and again, that's complex childhood trauma, and he grew up to be a vegetarian. Okay, so like just think about that. I mean, he looks fine, honestly. As far as health goes, Bruv was probably eating a shit ton of pasta, shit ton of bread, shit ton of rice, that kind of thing. Um, but like, do you think he was mentally okay? Is someone who talks about how disgusting it is to slaughter an animal, but then turns around and has hundreds of millions of Jews slaughtered in concentration camps, is that person okay? No. Vegans are mentally ill.